Hey everyone, welcome back to another lesson. So in the previous lesson, we were defining the three ways you can use in order to see and to recognize the acid and bases. We were talking about the Arrhenius one, which is the protons and the hydroxide ions. We were talking about the Bronsted-Lowry one, which is the acceptor and the donator of the protons. We were talking about the Lewis one, which we are going to elaborate in the future, especially when we start studying chemistry, which is the pair of electrons acceptor and donor. Anyway, in this lesson, I would like to talk about how can we actually represent the acidity of anything and also how basic something is. So we agree that the concentration of protons is directly correlated to how the acidity of the surrounding. But in order to represent it, in science, we use something called the pH scale. And the pH scale is a logarithmic scale that represents how basic or the acidity of something is, and it goes from 0 all the way to 14, where 0 is the most with the highest acidity, is something with the highest acidity, and 14 is the most basic something can get. A logarithmic scale is a scale that when you go from one number to the next number, it goes and divides and decreased by 10 times, which means that if the concentration of the protons in 1, for example, are 0.1, the concentration of protons when it comes to the second number will be 0.01. And you go and you divide this number by 10 in order to get to the next number in the pH scale. And there is a nice trick I would like to show you in the next few minutes that you can use in order to easily calculate the pH scale when they give you the concentration. I know you still don't know how to calculate concentration. Don't worry about it. We will reach it in the future. But for now, just know that the concentration, the molarity, we call it molarity, is represented by M, big M. But this is for now, this is just for your general information. In the future, we are going to elaborate on how to calculate the concentration as well. It's really easy. So we said that the pH scale is logarithmic, and it represents how the amount of protons you have inside your environment. The concentration of protons. So 1 is usually things like lemon juice and gastric acid you have in your stomach, apple juice, tomato juice, coffee is slightly acidic, milk, then you have water. The middle of the pH scale, 7, represent a neutral environment, and we will see why it is important in the future. After 7, from 7 to 14, it's basic. So egg are basic, baking soda is basic, soap is basic, ammonia is basic, bleach is very basic, and different solutions of alkalis are very, very basic. So this part is very basic and this part is very acidic. And we represent it from 0 to 14. Now that we have the general idea of the pH scale, we can see how we can actually calculate it. And I'm also going to give you a nice tip you can use in order to easily calculate by yourself the pH based on the molarity, based on the concentration. So pH is equal, don't be afraid from the math, we will explain everything in the future, to the minus log. As we said, this is a logarithmic scale, so the minus log of the concentration of the protons. Now, we have the logarithmic rules in mathematics. Don't worry about them now if you don't remember. Just remember that if you take your calculator and you just put any number here that represents the concentration, you'll be able to find the pH. So if they give you, for example, the pH, you will be able to go from the pH to the concentration of protons. And if they give you the protons concentration, you will be able to calculate it using the minus log concentration, the number here, back to the pH. Let me give you an example and I will show you how nice it is to actually calculate different pH. So on the IMAT exam, the Italian admission exam, they asked many questions on how to calculate the pH, and they usually give very easily to calculate numbers. Because you don't have a calculator for the exam, they are going to give you a very easy number. And the pH of minus log, for example, when the concentration is equals 0.0001. So we need to put 0.001, 3 zeros, 1 in the calculator. Now, a nice way to easily calculate when you have only 1 and zeros, when you have this kind of numbers, because of the logarithmic rules that you are going to study in the future, just remember that you can very easily find the following pH only by looking at the number and counting the number of zeros you have. You have 4 zeros, so the pH will be 4. And you can check it yourself and do it in the calculator. So if you type minus log of 0.0001, you will see that the pH, it gives you 4. And it's a very easy way to actually calculate the amount of pH, the number of pH you have and the concentration. So if they give you a question, what is the concentration of protons in pH of 13? Let's try to do it. So 13 equals minus log of what? Minus log of a number 1 with 13 zeros after it. So 0.000000000 1, or 1 times 10 to the minus 13. So if they give you this number as well, just take the following number and it will be your pH because of the logarithmic rules. If you don't know them yet, don't worry, we will study them when we study mathematics. But for now, just remember the following trick that you can use to calculate the pH in the admission exams. And they have this kind of questions from time to time, and it's really nice to see that how easy it is to get 3 points on the admission exam when you know how to recognize the following questions and you know how easy it is to calculate simple numbers when it comes to the pH. Now, another thing I didn't mention is that when it comes to the pH scale, we also have something called the Poh scale. The Poh is a representation of the concentration of hydroxide ions you have in your environment, and it is exactly like the pH scale, but it only talks about the hydroxide ions. So instead of going from 0, which is the most acid in the pH, it will go from 0, which is the most basic in the Poh scale. Also, because of the equilibrium of water, don't worry about it now. I know it's a big word, equilibrium, and you don't actually know what equilibrium is right now. Just remember the pH and the Poh, when you combine them and you add them up, they will always give you 14. So that's it. I hope this video made sense. This is just a simple way we calculate the pH based on the concentration of protons we have inside your environment. And this is some very basic examples of basic and things with that are basic and things that are more acid. And that's it. See you in the next video.